What really changes when a leader returns to their center, when they're able to reactivate their gravitas, clarity, natural resilience, and bring forward the energy they need to meet the day? In this episode of Unfazed Under Fire, we sit down with Ryan McShane just 2 weeks after he went through the Leadership Resilience Reset, which is one of the key cornerstones of the Resilient Leader Method. This isn't a polished testimonial. It's a raw, honest look at what it feels like when the noise drops and something deeper begins to emerge. Here's a couple clips from the podcast.
I think what the most significant aspect of what's behind everything that I'm experiencing is the less reactivity. And it's almost like no reactivity in some respects. Things that would set me off before were not setting me off. So the reactivity has been reduced to such an extent that it's almost inconsequential whatsoever. That's a real gift in and of itself. Not only do I have higher levels of sustained energy and feel good and don't get distracted, but everything that I'm doing now is experiencing that higher level of energy and having an impact on the people around. Let me just say and emphasize a point of this is it's not like I haven't experienced some of these things throughout my life, little glimmers of some of these things. But
Absolutely.
What I'm expressing to you is this is much more sustained and consistent. And I think the reason being is I'm not encumbered by the ego defenses that continuously distract me and only create that as a glimpse of clarity. Now, those ego distractions are gone to the extent where this is a continuous state of being, much more so than what I've ever experienced before. So it's almost like the cobwebs have been cleared and I can see clearly again. And that's part of that sense of that homecoming and sovereignty that we talked about.
If something caught your attention in those portions of the conversation, and if you're ready for a deeper way to lead, this conversation might be a sign you've been waiting for. I trust you'll enjoy the show. What if the power you've been searching for isn't something to earn, achieve, or even learn? Because it was never gone, just covered up. What if real leadership doesn't start with adding more, but with remembering who you are beneath all the noise and static? Welcome back to Unfazed Under Fire. I'm David Craig Utz. Today, I'm joined by my co-host, Ryan McShane. Unfortunately, Anatoly couldn't join us due to technical issues, but we wish him well. We'll see him next time. This is part 2 of our series on sovereignty. And today, we're taking a more personal turn. And it is serendipitous that we're recording this episode on July 4th. And while Independence Day is not the focus of today's show, it feels fitting as we talk about the deeper kind of freedom that comes when you reclaim your inner ground, your inner sovereignty. Now, just 2 weeks ago, Ryan McShane, our co-host, went through the Leadership Resilient Reset, the foundation of the RELM method that we've been sharing with you on the podcast. He's agreed to open up about this experience, what it's been like for him. Now, this isn't about making a case for RELM or offering a polished testimonial. It's really about exploring in real time what it's like in the days and weeks after the reset. What shifts, what shows up, what's still settling. So this is a real-time reflection, not a retrospective. Ryan's still in the early stages of integration, and we're going to hold the space with curiosity and care. During this conversation, he'll share what life was like before the reset, what happened in the experience itself, and what he's noticing now, just a couple weeks later. So let's just dive in. Ryan, you're not unlike other executives who have been through this process. You've had a successful career as an HR leader. You led a successful HR consulting practice and leadership training company, and have recently joined a well-respected leadership development firm, Ken Chapman Associates, as a thought leader and a leadership development consultant. And you got a beautiful family, celebrating your 26th anniversary with your beautiful wife. Your son recently graduated from your youngest son, right?
Yeah, from high school.
Yeah, it's just graduated from high school. Yet through your interactions with us on the podcast, you felt drawn to engage the RELM process. So I just want to get started with the first question. What was going on in your leadership or life that led you to say, while I'm on a good trajectory in my life, I can see where I could expand my sovereignty, my resilience, my clarity, and maybe realizing where you put some brakes on before that were not serving you? So if you could share a little bit about that.
I'm sure you've heard people say, I am my own worst enemy. And I think what they're really referring to is those little things that hold us back, where we derail ourselves. Some of those unconscious beliefs and even conscious beliefs that we have developed through experiences and conditioning throughout our life. And I'm no different than those folks. I've certainly been exposed to things that have affected me in a way that has limited me in terms of how I, process that, in terms of my experience with it and my ego protections that have been put up around myself. And I think that's always been a significant limitation for me. Now, others might not view it as a limitation, but I've always viewed it as a limitation. I think that I've always been aligned to continuous improvement. Always wanted to move in that direction to be the best that I can be. And I think that most people have that feeling and thought and hope for themselves. But that said, my experiences have been such that I always want to continue to not allow those conditions and those experiences and the way that I've felt like I've been held back, hold me back any longer. And I recognize that in the conversations that we've had throughout doing these podcasts together, I mentioned it before in prior podcasts, I felt an elevated state. From just interactions with you guys. Not only am I just fascinated by the conversation of elevating your consciousness and something that I've been interested in for many, many years, but I have two very bright individuals to dialogue with in terms of what this means. And I also really see a clear picture of how the realm and the leadership of resilience reset can really do so much for you in terms of elevating your state, your consciousness, and clearing out some of the things that have held us back. And I have been fortunate enough to now experience that and go through that. I'll kind of pause there and just kind of say that that's been some of my experience up to this point.
Yeah, well, it's not like any of the other executives that we work with. They're successful. They're in a C-suite role, a senior VP role, VP role, and they've made hay. They've made things happen. And we've talked about this on the show before, that we're in a different environment now that is much less is unforgiving in many ways. So if you have some of these things, these brakes that you put on, the ways of reacting when the pressure goes up, those things are more front and center now. Yeah. You can't hide the warts, if you will. We've also talked about executives have so much more on their plate, especially since 2020. We don't have to go through the list. We've done that many times. And I think they're privately as well as publicly sharing that more as organizations having to deal with this rising burnout and the implications of C-suite executives leaving the chair and other executives trying to keep up while being added on to the plate with things they have to do, like create psychological safety, be more empathetic, make sure that you're taking care of your team, even though they're remote and we've had to learn how to deal with remote teams, although that's starting to come back. This is the real reality that we're facing. It's not like what I'm hearing you say is there's nothing fundamentally wrong with you. We just shared, you have this great life. You've had this great success, but there was something you felt you could gain from going through this process that would put wind behind your sails, if that's fair to say. So I really appreciate all that you just shared, Ryan. And what I want to go to next is talk a little bit about what you noticed in the first day or two after the reset was completed. What did you notice, if anything, that was different for you following the 2 sessions with Anatoly?
Yeah, I'm happy to do that. It was a clear state of joy and gratitude. I was riding high for, at least 2 days, if not 3 days. We had the reset on Friday. So it was all day Friday, all day Saturday, all day Sunday, just riding high. Monday started a very busy week, and all my focus kind of shifted to all the responsibilities and things that I had to take care of. And as a consequence of that, I wasn't necessarily riding that huge high. But man, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, I just felt like a different person. I mean, I felt incredible. There was nothing shaking me, nothing bothering me, just full of gratitude and joy. And I couldn't say enough for that experience. It was quite pleasant, to say the least. And a place that I know that we probably have all glimpsed and had, moments of that. But trying to have sustained 3 days of that kind of state, woohoo! It's a beautiful thing.
That's not uncommon. And one of the reasons why we integrated leadership resilience coaching into this we've had people ride it too hard in a certain way. And we have to kind of slow people down and get them reconnected to it. So that hectic, crazy week, have you noticed anything different? Because you were working like getting up early, working till late. You had your son's high school graduation party coming up. You got a lot going on. And that is not unusual for the people that we work with that are executives. And as things settled down, did you notice anything different?
I think what the most significant aspect of what's behind everything that I'm experiencing is the less reactivity. And it's almost like no reactivity in some respects. Things that would set me off before were not necessarily setting me off. Now, during the very busy time during the week, there were things that were agitating, things that were bothering me, no question about it. And so my reactivity was much lesser so. Even since then, the reactivity has been reduced to such an extent that it's almost inconsequential whatsoever. And that's something that I'm consciously aware of. Before, I would have been swept away with frustration about a particular experience or incident. And that could have bothered me and agitated me for hours on end and consequently impacted everything that I did for the next few hours and probably the people around me. That's it. I'm not experiencing that. That's a real gift in and of itself. Not only do I have higher levels of sustained energy and feel good and don't get distracted, but everything that I'm doing now is experiencing that higher level of energy and having an impact on the people around me from a very positive standpoint. You know, life still happens and I'm still experiencing things that are frustrations, that are still challenges and things of that nature. But I'm taking a much more observation role in this versus being the character that's so swayed by the winds. I'm looking at it and thinking, okay, now in this situation, what calls for the best of me? How can I best most positively respond to this that impacts people in a way that is loving, is compassionate, serves them the best, not what serves me, what serves them the best in this regard. And just that conscious introspection in an instant when those things happen is just incredible to me. And I think that it benefits not only myself, but obviously those people around me.
When we have those compressed times, we tend to go into survival mode is doing its thing. It is, I've got to get this done. I got to get this done. I have to make sure that's done before this is done. I've got to get ready for this. My son's high school graduation. This mechanical thing isn't working for me. So there's all these things going on. And it's not that we're not human after this process. There were certain things that bother you, but once that pressure kind of dissipated a little bit, you got into more of a normal schedule. It was like, boom, it was just right there, probably there the whole time, but it was less likely you weren't noticing it as much. What you also seem to be noticing is that there's this underpinning of presence. A lot of clients report that I'm just here now. And I'm wondering, and the second thing I wanted to confirm is like, there's this foundation or floor that you're standing on that seems a bit like I'm standing in my own self solidly. And because of the presence, I'm able in the moments call forth that which I didn't always have before. That's naturally looking into what's the highest and best in this moment and how can I serve this moment, not necessarily worrying about what the next moment is. How can I get through? Any color you want to add to that I put words in your mouth there? Was that?
You did. I think you articulated it really well. And it's remarkable how well you did state that. That's precisely what I'm experiencing is that constant, continuous presence. And I think that that's something that we all too, as a busy executives experience is I got to be here. I got to be there. I got to be everywhere. I got to be this for this person. I got to be that for that person. I'm not experiencing those as much. I'm experiencing that presence. And what do I have to do right now? And that what's most important in this moment? And being fully energetically aligned to what's most important in this moment is powerful, very powerful. And I'm not dividing myself is what it comes down to. And I think that that's the constant drain that I always experience is I feel like I'm dividing myself. I've got to be here, there, everywhere, and be this for that person and this for that person. And that's not something that I'm having to deal with anymore. Consequently, my energy is a lot higher. I'm a lot more focused. I'm a lot more productive. I'm a lot more impactful.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I'm going back to the day that we're recording this on. I think somebody famously said, when a house divided will certainly fall, right? And you're saying, and when you're divided, and you're trying to be something for somebody else or try to figure out how to bring in your situational leadership. What do I have to do now in this moment to convince this person to do X? Or that steals your energy. And so and what I hear, you're planted in your it's this paradox that I hear you talking about, which is I'm fully planted in myself, and yet I'm orienting to serving. That is a natural place for human beings, and we need more of that in this world right now. I'm solidly in the core of me, and I'm looking out with presence, and I'm attending to what needs to be attended to. So I really want to thank you for sharing that, because I just want to, underscore that. Most people have been conditioned to believe that they're incomplete, that they have to fix something, change something, add something in order to be worthy, whole, effective as a leader. Yeah. What does my organization need? But what you're describing is it reveals the opposite, that this presence, this clarity, this inner knowing, it doesn't need to be built. It just needs to be reactivated. And it's been waiting for that all along, and something gets reactivated in this process. And the tragedy, if we want to call it that, is that we spend much of our time trying to change from the level of the mind, trying to think our way into a new identity, right? But actually, this actually shifts everything back to what's true, coming home, as we've talked about in the last series. And that's what this process unlocks, not a better version of the self, but access to what's always been there beneath the noise, which is amazing. And once you experience that, it's not a technique, it's remembering, and it sticks. So let's talk a little bit about how this is manifesting externally for you. You talked a little bit about I'm dealing with situations differently, but have you noticed anything in your work, in your personal relationships, in your family, or even in your inner world, if you could articulate a little bit more about that?
We've talked about flow state a little bit in the past, and I had an opportunity to present some research that I did on a couple of providers and some things that we're considering to do from a business standpoint with KCA. And I recognized afterwards that, wow, I was just in the flow. I wasn't self-conscious. I wasn't thinking about how is this sounding or what. I was just going. And afterwards, I, had some feedback and response from some of my colleagues that it was what I shared was of a high value and very, very appreciated and very professional and things of that nature. So that's something that I experienced. If anybody else has been in that flow state, how good it feels. You're just operating on all cylinders in that moment and fully conscious, fully present, fully engaged in what you're doing. And that's something that I've experienced to a great extent, not just in my work, professional work, but in the things that I've been doing. I love to talk about is golf and being fully present in that moment. And again, none of us are perfect, and the golf game is always elusive and challenging, but
very humbling.
It can be a very humbling game. But to that extent, the things that would bother me in the past don't bother me anymore. And in fact, I see almost everything as an opportunity to continue to grow, as an opportunity to learn from what I've just experienced. And that is so empowering versus just getting upset and getting emotionally hijacked. And I think so many of us all operate from that to a certain extent, but to have that no longer guiding you and impacting your energy, I tell you what, it's pretty incredible how I'm experiencing that. And we use the term longing in the past, and I think it's really apt for how I felt for many, many years, is this longing. And Anatoly had mentioned about this longing for a homecoming, this longing for yourself, your true, genuine, authentic self. And that's something that I've recognized very early on in my career is, why is it I have to feel like I have to wear a mask to get along in this environment? Why can't I just show up authentically? And I used to think that about other people too. Why can't they show up authentically? Well, I now recognize this. I see that those masks are the ego protections that we build up through life's experiences to protect ourselves. And
absolutely,
I don't feel like I have those masks that are guiding me. They're probably still there. They probably still exist to a certain extent, but they're not prevalent to the extent that it's shaping me and my experiences any longer. You use the term in the backseat. The ego's in the backseat. It's no longer the driver. And I think that's really apt for what I'm experiencing. And I'm delighted about it.
Well, you're just beginning the next phase, which we call the integration window. And when the reset kind of unlocks this profound shift that you've shared. But what happens next is the real depth and the long-term benefit that emerge from this process, because it isn't just you feel great for 3 days after and it's gone, right?
an experience. And I had the same experience when I did this. I was sitting outside on my deck, looking up at the tree, and my eyes just zeroed in on a pine cone at the top of the tree. I just said, that's beautiful. This moment is so beautiful. That you're just so present to what's going on. It's profound. And that initial phase of expansion is almost like, I don't know if it'd be fair to say that longing gets answered. Like, here I am finally recovering who I am for real in my expression. Yeah. And in that moment, there's this elation. Of course, then life hits and you have to kind of learn to ride the new Ferrari, if you will, in those moments. And there's an adaptation period. But there's something sacred about this stage where something shifted, but you're still learning to walk in it, right? And I really invite my clients, don't rush this. It's not like you're not getting any benefits. You're getting benefits right away. More energy. I'm standing in myself. I'm present all the time. There's a clarity that comes that's different from before. But let's just spend a little bit of time there. And again, it's only been 2 weeks. So is there anything you're doing that's helping you stay anchored in this reset that you've done that has been effective for reconnecting you to regalvanizing that place that you've discovered? Anything you've been doing to help you stay in remembrance of that?
Yeah, I do want to speak to that. But first, I want to say, David, that following that real high of gratitude and joy that I was experiencing and jumping into my busy schedule, I started to have grave concerns that, hey, wait a second, this isn't sticking. Maybe this isn't working. Maybe I just imagined all this wonderfulness, that I was concerned that there was something wrong with me in terms of how this was being integrated. And maybe it just wasn't working, if you will. And I think that that's why the term homecoming is so important. And Anatoly talked about it before. It is you returning to you, your most authentic self. And it's always present. And you can tap back into that. And so after the rapidity of the crazy week that slowed down a little bit, over the weekend, I was able to kind of tap back in and go back into that place that is me and really refocus and get present once again after the party and after the slowdown and all that kind of stuff. And once again, it's there, it's present, it's back. It never left, really. I was just now able to refocus on that. And I think that was important. Now, to your question about what are you doing to strengthen that? I'm spending the time and it's not a whole lot of time. Yeah, I'm spending the time to really check in with myself, and not from a mental standpoint necessarily, but getting into my body. How do I feel? What am I feeling? And for anybody who knows me, my happy place is my front porch. I look out over a soybean field.
With your cigar.
Yeah, with my cigar. That's exactly right. You betcha. So I'm sitting on my porch, looking out over my yard and across the farmer's field and listening to the birds and the wind chimes. And that centers me. And just taking that time to sit there and relax and just not think about anything, just clear my mind completely and observe nature. That in and of itself really reinforces that presence, that sense of well-being, that gratitude. Like you said, looking at that pine cone, I've had those pine cone moments where I'm, sitting there going, oh my gosh, this world is so beautiful. This is heaven on earth. This is something that is very special. And I think that we're all often so busy that we see challenges in everything that we, observe that's outside of us. Whereas I think that when we pause for the cause, as I say, to really slow down for a minute, we can see just how beautiful this existence is and our part in that existence and how we can contribute to that beauty for other people around us. And that goes back to that servant heart that we talk about.
Interesting. You said a couple of things to follow up on it. And one of them was that your call to pause for the cause is not like in your calendar or something you have to remember, but it's something that comes up for you at a moment that says, I have a space here. Let me take advantage of it to do that. Is that fair to say that it is not something like I'm following some hack that somebody told me to do to take up 15 minutes twice a day? I'm actually in the moment realizing I have space. Let me reconnect. Is that fair to say?
That's exactly right. That's exactly right.
This is where the well-being comes in. This is, again, what we encourage in post-reset, when the post-reset coaching is to notice and be tuned into yourself. when it's time to take a break, or when there's an opportunity and it's the best use of your time is to take a deep breath, is to go outside. And the other thing it's really amazing of you said, because we're being told by many sources, there's a lot to fear, and there may be, but there's this undercurrent of the amazing thing about being alive in this world that becomes an underpinning that people tap into after this. And that is, would it be fair to say, a foundation of leadership? If you're excited, if you're connected to that gratitude for being here, and you're no longer reacting and letting it steal your energy, that has to communicate somehow to others around you.
Yeah, I think that's an essence of who we are. And I think that's a part of the depiction of the longing, that we consciously and unconsciously recognize that essence. And so when you recognize it in someone else, you automatically have an affinity for that person. But when you can exhibit that and bring that to bear in terms of your interactions and relationships with everyone, whether professionally or personally, it flavors those interactions. For a lack of better terms, it's a vibe check. You're really raising the vibe, the frequency and the vibes with other people around you. And that has an impact. There were some stresses going on around the house with scheduling and plans and things like that. And my wife and sons were a little concerned about some things. And I said, you can definitely feel the energy, and it's something that is a little bit lower in terms of that energy and how it's resonating. And I immediately recognized that, and also recognized my tendency to get sucked into it. And in this case, I was not. I was standing outside of it, observing it, recognizing it, seeing it for what it is, and then consciously considering, how can I raise the energy? How can I raise the vibe? What can I bring to this experience right now to help those people that might be suffering a little bit from their angst and their anxiety, their confusion, whatever it may be?
Yeah, I'm thinking about the whole idea of psychological safety, right? We're taught and we're told. Some executives may look at that and say, yeah, I get it. I'm looking like, but I'm a deer in the headlights. Okay, you want me to add that to my plate? And it's important. But what I'm hearing you saying is you're in your own psychological safety.
Yeah.
And you are, you're even noticing, and this is part of the integration process, you're noticing that the mind will still come up with its old chatter, right? And sometimes when we're under pressure, we can, even after the reset, we can succumb for a few minutes to that. But there's this bounce back that happens. Like at a certain point, you just drop it. And not only that, but going back to psychological safety, when you're in your own psychological safety and you're recognizing, what do I really want to do here? What's my underlying intention? Because I love my family. I don't want to get sucked back into that. But it's not it's a mental thing, but it's not. Is it? Like, share a little bit about that moment. How did you not just get sucked into that old reactivity? If you could pinpoint that moment and think about that a little bit, and kind of put you on the spot.
I was having a conversation with my wife just a few days ago, and she brought up a memory, an old experience that happened many years ago that was painful to her, but also painful to me because it was painful to her. And it also involved another family member. And I recognized very quickly that, hey, I feel this pain in this moment based on her bringing up that experience. And I said, listen, I'd like to change the subject at this point because I need to process what you just shared with me. Now, in the past, I would have reacted in a very emotional way. I would have made the situation worse because of the pain and emotion that I was feeling in that moment.
And for her, you're feeling it.
Yeah.
She was upset that she was dealing with this. You would get angry that she was having to deal with this situation.
Yeah, and it also included a family dynamic, so it made it even more complex. So, but recognizing that, I had asked, hey, can we change the subject? And honestly, all I needed to do is say, okay, I was recognizing in that moment, this is painful. This is something that just came up. I recognize the pain. I'm not being hijacked by the pain, but at the same time, I need to take the time to process this. I need to remove myself from her and this environment just to go think about this and talk about it in those quiet moments. That's an occasion in the future where I said, okay, now let's think about this. Why did that bother me? What was happening when I felt that? Why am I feeling that? what's going on there? And so I was able to really get into some self-understanding based on that prior experience. And as a result of that, I have a much deeper understanding of what was taking place within me, why I was being affected the way I was being affected, and what is a good, healthy way to respond to that, but to also process it in a way that doesn't continue to linger for me and doesn't continue to affect those relationships. And that's what's important to me.
Well, we think about executives that are in the fray of things, and we might coach them. When you're noticing that reactivity go up, maybe you need to step away, process, and come back. But the thing is there was something still in them that was catching something, and they couldn't help themselves.
Yeah.
What I'm hearing you saying is you're able to catch it, say, as much as you may want to process this now, I need some time to let this digest a little bit. And then you were able to come back and have a conversation from that clearer place and actually probably be more present for your wife in that moment than you would have been if you would have reacted. Is that fair to say?
Yeah. 100%.
Yeah. Another thing, we're in this series about sovereignty, and I'm wondering if post reset, you have a new view of what sovereignty is. You shared a little bit of snippets of it earlier. What is it like to live and lead from that now? Anything you want to say about the difference now in your view of what that is versus before?
I think in the context of before and after, I would put it like this. Before, I was incomplete. I was highly dependent, a little bit of a victim mentality. Whereas now I feel more whole, more present, more complete, more myself than I have been in many, many, many years. And as a result of that, I feel like I recognize that all things stem from me and my level of presence and consciousness. And from that standpoint, I feel more sovereign.
Yeah.
I don't feel so dependent on others.
Yeah. So the whole idea of gravitas, you're there, you're feeling it. It's the floor you stand on, that in
Yes.
presence and clarity. And how would you align that with your understanding of executive presence from your putting your leadership development hat? What does this give somebody that wants that has been working on executive presence, hasn't quite got there? What do you think this experience has you reflect on what executive presence is and what it's there to deliver?
I think sovereignty and executive presence could be characteristics that would be used to define each other. So I think that they're very related from that standpoint. The sense and the feeling that I've described from a standpoint of sovereignty and the presence is that executive presence that I'm talking about and how I show up. I'm fully engaged in what I'm doing. It is not a sense of self-consciousness, self-limitation that I might have experienced in the past. I'm in that flow state, and that's that executive presence that comes across and has that positive impact and influence. We've all been around those people that are like, wow, I don't know what it is about this person, but they've got something special. And I really just want to hear more of what they have to say. And they're going places, type of thing. And you just want to kind of hitch your wagon to them and say, keep talking. Let me keep hearing what you have to say. I'm bought in. I'll take two, whatever it is that they're.
Exactly.
And I think that's exhibiting what I'm feeling and experiencing.
I really appreciate you sharing all this today. I think you might have saw my blog post I put out. You might be familiar with this new phrase that Microsoft has coined, infinite workday.
No,
Now
I
come up
haven't
with a
seen
name.
that.
Yeah, they've coined the phrase infinite workday, and they've been noticing that people are clocking in to do emails at night and on weekends, and
Sure.
they're having rising issues of burnout in their organization. And they did research on their own organization. And one little tidbit is 52% of their executives feel that work is fractured and chaotic. Now, I'm looking and comparing this to where you're at right now. And what does that do for one's ability to bring it every day for a company like that to deliver with their team and to make things happen and create value versus where you're standing in now? And I want to kind of speak to those that might be listening now that are in that fragmented place. What might you offer, not as advice, but as real-time reflection from where you're sitting right now from this process to them?
Yeah. When you think about being fractured and chaotic, and we also recognize that there is a clear prevalence of work-life balance issues, stress, disengagement, low morale, quiet quitting, things of that nature. And we're wondering, wait a second, Could one thing have to do with another? You bet. They all impact each other. And I'm smiling because I'm pretty delighted. I think that I recognize that it's the darkest before the dawn. When things look like they're falling apart, maybe they're falling into place. And that's what I'm seeing now in the workplace. That it is chaotic. It is complex. It is confusing. But I think this is the perfect recipe for creating something new. And I think that the realm is the ingredient that will bring that for executives to be able to guide that across their organization. That full presence that eliminates that fragmentation, that eliminates that chaos and being swept away by our emotions. I mean, just think about the energy of just having to respond and react to everything that's brought to you as a senior leader in an organization. Now, recognize that from the standpoint of dealing with it from a sovereign state. It's wholly different. It's a completely different world. And if we've noticed anything, that we can be two people looking at the same thing and come away with very different experiences of what we're seeing. And I think that's also indicative of our state of being, our consciousness. And so that's what I think that Realm offers, is a higher level of consciousness, a higher level of state of being that enables you to see the opportunity instead of the chaos. And that's what I'm delighted about with the workforce today. We have a tendency to, sit there and go, oh, this is what's wrong with the world, and this is what's wrong with work, and this is what's wrong with these executives. And, we can enumerate all the gripes and complaints that we have. But I'm wanting to look at all of those things for the standpoint of, what does that show us? What are the opportunities that exist? And what we're seeing as the symptoms. We all recognize that most of what we experience is we're addressing the symptoms and not the root cause. And that's what Realm does, is it gets us down to the root instead of dealing with all the symptoms and we got to chase this or we got to chase that. No, let's get right down to the root cause and the essence of what we're dealing with.
Yeah, it's so true. And that's quite frankly, if I'm going down a path that is forging a new path, right? We're forging a new path with this. And a lot of people don't understand it from the point of view of the old perspective of development. And you got to work 30 days to change a habit. It's all about LinkedIn post of, here's how Bill Gates, Elon Musk, and Richard Branson structure their days. If you mirror this structure in your day, you'll be successful like them. Probably before I met Anatoly and we started this process, I would have kind of sucked into that a little bit.
Sure.
Right? Yeah, let's see how I can structure my day to be successful. But then I look at it now, and that if you did that, if you studied them and structured your day to be successful like them, you might get more success. But would you be left full and complete and happy? Versus now, if you look at who you are and standing in this place you're in, you're looking out and creating your own habits based on your own creativity and your own desire to create value, your own desire to do things. And you'll have the schedule for that, right? You'll have the habits for that because there's something naturally driving you from a point of view of passion, if you will, if that's fair to say.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then the other thing you said, people standing in this place can deal with what other circumstances arise in a way that's not only practical, it's healthier.
100%.
Right? It's practical. It's so practical because if you are in the moment and you are engaging other people, not from your reactivity, from a place you shared, where let me figure out what's highest and best in this situation. That means I might have to ask some questions. I might need to explore what's really getting into somebody's craw about something, because I realize taking the time in that is helping them dissolve their reactivity. And also maybe there's a gem in their concern. I'm not worried about pushing it forward because I don't have time. And when we don't have time to address something, it tends to rear its ugly head later on and cause delays anyway, right? From passive aggressiveness or somebody just getting upset, I'm going to do it my way, and it's counter to what the team's doing or whatever it is. So it's really beautiful what you're sharing here.
It is. And let me just say and emphasize a point of this is it's not like I haven't experienced some of these things throughout my life, little glimmers of some of these things. But what I'm expressing to you is this is much more sustained and consistent. And I think the reason being is I'm not encumbered by the ego defenses that continuously distract me and only create that as a glimpse of clarity. Now, those ego distractions are gone to the extent where this is a continuous state of being, much more so than what I've ever experienced before. So it's almost like the cobwebs have been cleared and I can see clearly again. And that's
Yeah.
part of that sense of that homecoming and sovereignty that we talked about.
And just to go back to the process, did you feel like something was being done to you, or what was the experience of the process of reconnecting to this place? Was it some magic, hypnosis going on, or what did you feel as you were doing the reset with Anatoly as far as your own experience of sovereignty in it?
It was an authentic conversation, is the best way I can describe it. It was just like you and I sitting here talking, but there was certainly a heart connection to what was being shared and said, both from myself and Anatoly and what we were saying. And there was a genuineness that was experienced through both of us dialoguing back and forth. And that was really refreshing. I think that we all appreciate that genuine conversation that you have with a good friend, and being able to experience that with Anatoly. And I've known Anatoly, a year and a half, maybe. So it's not like we're long lost or long friends that have grown up together and things of that nature. But to be able to have that genuine conversation, whether it's with your best friend or any person you meet off the street, you know what I'm talking about in terms of the value of that. It's just something that sticks with you. It's a message that's meant for you. And that's what we experienced during the
Yeah, that's a good experience. A lot of clients feel like they're surprised by it. It's kind of like whether it's a conversation with one of your best friends at Towson Diner, or it's with your significant other when you're feeling the glow of pride for your kids, or it could be simply you walk into Starbucks not expecting to have a conversation. You struck one up with another human being
Right.
who was aligned in a certain way,
Yeah.
and you ended up spending an hour there when you thought you're just going in to get a cup of coffee.
Yeah.
I mean, those are what we all crave. And imagine having those kinds of conversations in your organization with your direct reports or your boss or peers. Are we really having those kinds of conversations? And wouldn't those be good ones? You and I are both Baltimore Ravens fans. Lamar spends a lot of time and talks about off-field time with his brothers on the team as being essential to understanding how we think and how we operate with each other.
It is.
And that's a lost art in organizations. We tend to rush through every day, and we don't push back on some things that we know are a waste of time because we don't want to be politically incorrect. And yet, if you think about those kinds of situations, what I'm hearing you saying is you're not going to go in with both guns blazing, but there may be a way to express the concern in a way that can be heard, right?
100%. And I think what you're pointing towards, David, is relationship. And what defines that relationship? Is it entirely transactional, which I think many of our relationships have been reduced to, is what can you do for me? What can I do for you? Or is it transformational? And there's a wholly different essence to what we're talking about in terms of transactional versus transformational. And transformational, we're both sharing our positive energy with one another. You grow from what I share, and I grow from what you share. And it's not just get this or you get that. That's more that transaction. But that transformation is we've both grown from these exchanges and experiences. I didn't just get something to satisfy my ego, and you got something to satisfy your ego. It's much deeper and more impactful than that.
It's truly being in the same boat, rowing in the same direction, and trying to help each other be more effective in the rowing.
Yeah.
Or in the way of which we're thinking about the boat we're in. And that's the fundamental of collaboration. So what you're saying is this really opens up a doorway for deeper collaboration. Like you imagine two people that have been through RELM and spend time getting aligned, what they could do together, or a team, what they could do together would be phenomenal. It may change even the way the organization operates and what it does and what it delivers in a way that is more valuable for the clients that they're serving.
Yeah, 100%.
And because and the other thing is I'm having fun again.
Yes.
I mean, I would say that fun is not the top thing on executives' list right now for going to work every day, right?
No, you're exactly right. Life's too short not to have some fun. And if we spend the majority of our waking hours in a working capacity, then I hope you're having fun while you're doing it, because otherwise you're going to look back and go, what was it all for?
Exactly. Well, I know that you're doing this on a day that you're going away on vacation, and you're about to have a lot of fun by going to Bethany Beach, Delaware, and you probably have your family to get together. And if the car isn't packed, you have things to do. So I want to respect that and close it out here. But if there's any final words you want to share just to feel complete today, And again, I really very much appreciate you showing up and being vulnerable to share what's been going on for you post
Well,
recent.
thank you. Thank you. I appreciate being invited, and I definitely appreciate the experience. I wish Anatoly's connection could have worked better for us to have his input and
Yeah,
expertise and his gift being shared with us as per usual. I'm grateful. I'm grateful for this experience. I'm grateful for you, David. I'm grateful for Anatoly. I look forward to these conversations every week in hopes that they can benefit other people. I mean, that's what guides me, is really advancing leadership and it doesn't have to be, work doesn't have to be the 4-letter word that we've all experienced, that it can be fun, it can be fulfilling, it can be joyful, it can be purpose driven and have a lot of meaning. And I think we've gotten away from that transactional standpoint that we've talked about. And it can be transformational for individuals, for teams, for organizations, for communities, for entire societies. And I think that's not to be forgotten. That what is the bigger picture here? And the bigger picture also starts with you as an individual and
it all starts with you.
what can you bring to that? Yeah. So I'm delighted to have this experience. I'm delighted to be here with you. And I just want to thank you.
Very good. Well, your journey shows what's possible, yet it's not a finished chapter. There's going to be breath between the pages here, if you will. And as I speak to other clients who remain connected to their shift at Realm Activists, there are layers of deepening that happen, and that's where the truth lives. So we'll be looking forward as those layers of the onion go deeper and deeper. Now, the core of Realm is that it reconnects one to their experience of their core self or home. In the process, they begin to naturally operate from being, not doing. When a leader stops performing and starts being, when the mind quiets and a deeper current comes online, that's when everything begins to align and deepen. This leads to greater impact, more value creation, and a reconnection to a deeper meaning in your life and role as an executive leader. Again, as Ryan shared, sovereignty is not a technique. It's the ground upon which leadership stands itself. And most importantly, this resides in you right now, as Ryan shared. It just has to be activated. So in our final episode of this series, we'll explore what happens when organizations begin to lead. We started touching on that in the end. What would it look like if organizations begin to lead from sovereignty? How does that shift a culture where people feel safe and stand in their power? What kind of performance emerges when presence, not performance, becomes the norm? If you're ready for your own experience of the resilient leader method, not just to cope, but to rise, we invite you to reach out, because once you return to your center, everything changes. Stay with us. The journey's just continuing. Have a great rest of your day. This is David Craig, Leadership Alchemist, signing off.